I moved to my dad's when I was 10, and I didn't know anyone in the area except for the family my dad was friends with. A single mom with 3 kids. Luckily, there was a girl a couple of years older than me. I was 12 at the time I met her, and we got to know each other a little over the years. We weren't close, but ended up having the same friends. One night, my friend Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother. They happened to be in the house alone because my friend's mom was at work. Here's where things get terrifying. Her mom had been helping out this one lady through her work, and she got to know her fairly well. She found out that she had a sister who was in a mental asylum, but had been let out recently. The night Rob was hanging out with my friend, they get a knock on the door. My friend thought it was their mom. She knocks a certain way when coming in, and answered it without thinking. Rob wasn't supposed to be there, and took off through the window to his house down the road. He never thought twice about it. It wasn't her mom, it was the sister of the lady her mom was helping, and she figured out through talking to her sister where the family lived and her mom's working schedule. She came in, and this is where I don't know all the details, and I'm glad I don't. My friend's younger brother got away to the neighbors to call the police. The lady brutally murdered my friend a week from Christmas, decapitated her, and left her body naked in a bathtub. I think they found her head in the Christmas presents, but I don't know for sure. I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral.
I was 12 when this happened. Usually, my youngest brother, who would have been 10 at this point, and I would walk home from the bus stop after school. Both of our parents worked, and we would spend a few hours home alone together before my mother got home from the senior center she was working for. We did fine on our own, and by then, I knew how to cook safely and to keep the house locked up, and the neighbors usually kept an eye out for anyone on the property. Normally, my little brother would be a bit ahead of me and make it to the house first. But this particular day, he had taken the bus to a friend's house. I walked home and into the house and went straight to the bathroom to have a pee, as was my daily routine after school. After washing my hands, I moved into the kitchen to find a snack. At this point, it hadn't even occurred to me that I didn't have to use my key to open the front door. The house was always locked when I got home. The only excuse I can make for this is that I was a teenager and I was just glad to be out of school. So, completely oblivious, I made myself a sandwich and sat down at the kitchen table to munch. A couple minutes passed, and I'm feeling pretty dang good to be home and enjoying my ham and cheese when I heard a noise at the back of the house. It sounded like a couple of footsteps. At this point, I started to freak out a bit and tried to remember if the door was locked when I came in or not. I couldn't remember. I began making my way slowly towards the back of the house where the sound was coming from. I heard it again. A couple of shuffling steps and then silence. There was someone in the back bedroom, my room, moving around. I sat completely still for a few seconds, trying not to make any noise, in order to not alert the intruder or let them know that a 12-year-old girl was home alone in the house. I heard the footsteps again. Whoever this person was, they didn't seem to sound like they were in a hurry, so I figured they must not have realized I was there yet. I carefully made my way out into the yard and the sunlight of 4 o'clock. I ran as soon as my feet were off the porch and got to one of the neighbors to come back over with me. He was a friend of the family that lived really close and kept an eye on our place a lot of the time. He told me to go into his yard and wait there. I had a clear view of my house from his yard, and I agreed that it was a good spot. He told me to call 911 if he wasn't back outside within 5 minutes. I waited in his yard for probably 2 minutes before I started thinking that he must be dead or dying, and I was debating on whether or not to call the cops when my neighbor came out of my front door with some guy I had never seen before. He had the guy's arms behind his back, and he was holding him. He shouted to me to call the cops, and I did, telling them what had happened. They showed up and took the guy away. I guess he was wanted in another county for breaking into multiple houses while people were away at work, vacation, etc. I'm really glad I alerted my neighbor instead of walking into the room. Or who knows what could have happened.
So when I was around 9 to 10 years old, I used to play football on a local team who had their outdoor practices not far from where I lived. I'm a girl, by the way. Because it wasn't that far away, me and a friend who was on the same team used to take our bikes there together. The easiest way to get there is to go on the long walking track that for a long time ago used to be where the trains went, but they later took away the train tracks and put cement on the ground. So today it's a long walking track that many dog owners love to use when walking their dogs. There are some parts along the track that has like small woods, but there are mostly houses, so you feel quite safe when you walk there at night. It is always lit up with a strong light, so you can see at least 50 meters ahead of you with no trouble. So one night, at almost 8 p.m., me and my friend were riding our bikes from practice. I have no memory of what we talked about, but just that we laughed and joked around. We were about to turn down from a sidewalk onto the long walking track, and we saw a man who came walking from the direction we were heading. I remember how slowly he walked, and how he kind of looked off, like something wasn't quite right with him. He stopped just in front of us and just stood there, looking at us. And because it was a small uphill, we had to jump off our bikes so we could get up safely on the walking track without falling off our bikes. But he was blocking the way. I remember how quiet it got between us and how big his eyes looked when he followed us with his gaze. When we passed him, it felt like he wanted to grab one of us, so we quickly jumped back on and continued. In the corner of my eye, I saw how he turned around, facing our way in the same direction he just came from, and then started walking behind us. It just seemed so weird, but I wasn't scared at that moment, just very uneasy. I should mention it was just us three, no one else. My friend had also noticed how weird the man acted and told me we should go a little bit faster. So that's exactly what we did. We both looked back after speeding it up a bit and could see to our horror how he'd started half walking and half running behind us with his eyes nailed on us. "Faster!" my friend yelled and took off with me behind. I tried to keep up with her, but fell back a little bit. I was ready to pee my pants when I looked back to see the man with his long legs running like a maniac, aiming directly at me. I remember how she kept yelling, "Faster! Faster! Faster!" How she kept looking back when I no longer dared to because I was so scared. That was when two older women came from a sidewalk. We finally dared to stop. And when we turned around this time, the guy had thrown himself into the woods and was nowhere to be seen. My friend told me afterwards, after we had finished crying, that the biggest reason why she kept screaming was because he was just a few inches from grabbing my bike. I can imagine what he was planning on doing with the girl he managed to catch. Drag her down into one of the small woods and have his way. It just seems so odd that he took his chances with two girls at the same time. It sounds horrible to say, but I'm pretty sure my friend wouldn't have stopped if he got a hold of my bike.
Okay, so this happened a few weeks ago. Me and a few pals were going to hang out at my friend's house. There were about 6 of us. Anyway, we get there, a few hours go by. It's around 12. We decide a few of us will go play basketball at our local community centre. They had a recreational building meant for playing basketball, lifting, etc. We stay there until 4 AM, with various breaks in between. We go back to my buddy's house and hang out for another hour. One of my friends named Zach told me he left his keys in the college. I offered him a ride and he accepted. We go back to the college, but something was off. We saw 2 large white vans and a small white car. We drive through the long parking lot to the end where the vans are. We are just looking at the vans. I turned to my left and outside the window there was a man, about 10 feet away. This was no ordinary man. He had to be 6'7" and was wearing all black. He also had leather jackets and pants, black gloves, and even that wasn't the most off thing about him. He had a black, white and red mask. He was also holding something. Zach and I still don't know what it was. We kind of debate over it. It could have been a bat, but it also could have been a stick. Zach and I had too much adrenaline at the time. He was speed walking towards my window. I booked it. I slammed my foot on the pedal and did a U-turn and sped out. We saw another one that looked just like him in the parking lot beside us. We just assumed that there were more because they had to come in their vans. We still don't know who it was though.
So this happened last night and I'm still freaking out. My roommate had gone up to Fort Hills to spend Christmas with his family and they were there for about 3 days. On the 27th around midnight, he asked him if I could pick him up because he doesn't really want to stay another night. I don't mind. We've been best friends for 4 years, so I'm used to driving him to the city. Now a little backstory. I live in a small rural area and there are only 2 ways to get from our town to the next city, both of which take an hour-and-a-half road trip. One road is the main highway but doesn't lead to the foothills, so it would take me 2 hours to reach him that way. The other is a back road that leads straight to the foothills, so naturally I took that road. Now this road is surrounded by nothing but deserts for about 20 miles with the occasional housing development, so it's very dark at night. It's also very secluded and less taken. The only reason you take it is to go to the foothills, the college, or you are leaving the country, nothing else. There are about 4 cars total that's going the way I'm going while driving and they passed me within a few minutes. So the speed limit is 65 miles per hour and I'm going 55. Something's wrong with my car, by the way. It shakes if I go above 60. But to the point, after a while, it's just me driving. About 15 minutes into the drive, I see a car coming from behind me. I pay no attention to it because I figure I'll just let it pass me like the other cars do. It comes up behind me and is right up on my back. I'm more confused to say the least, and I'm a little scared. Why is this person directly behind me? Why is he behind me when I'm in the slow lane only going 55? I didn't go faster and I don't move, which I guess egged him on, because they kept turning their lights on and off and started swerving behind me. Now, I'm thoroughly freaked out and keep hoping that they'll either leave me alone or another car's going to drive by. Neither of those things happen. They do this all the way to the foothills. I think, okay, they're either going to keep following me or turn somewhere else. They kept following me. I'm nearing the exit where my friend is, so I'm afraid they're going to see where my friend lives and hurt them. So I call my friend and tell him to meet me at the convenience store because I wanted to get something to drink, not telling him that I was being followed. I get to the store and watch the car pass by the store, and finally calm down, thinking it was just some arsehole messing with me. For about half an hour, it's fine. It's just us talking about what we did during the holidays and joking around and stuff. I had completely forgotten about the car. until it started happening again. Now, the reason I didn't tell my roommate to begin with is because he kind of has a temper, so instead of being scared, he'll get really pissed. Not only at the car, but at me for not telling him before. He's screaming for me to stop the car so he can deal with this arsehole, and I'm refusing out of fear. The thing is, my roommate is 5'10" tall, bodybuilder, so he's a pretty intimidating guy. I, on the other hand, well, I'm 5'6" and disabled, with the only thing going for me is that I can carry a hatchet everywhere I go. So he's used to scaring people off. I tell him no, that we're going to the police station in our town, and he calms down a bit. As we get to the station, the car disappears. We sit there for 15 minutes seeing if he circles back. Now in hindsight, what we did was kind of stupid because we didn't go into the station and ask for help and just went home without thinking that he might be waiting for us to leave. We're constantly looking behind our shoulders while we are driving, making sure that no one follows us, and when we get home, we thought they were gone. Now, this is the scariest part of all, which still scares the shit out of me. We had been home for hours and my roommate was already passed out in the room and I was the only one awake. It was about 4 in the morning and I'd gone to the restroom, which was right across the hall from my room. Now, the way to our house is set up that the kitchen and living room are now separated by a wall with a 4-foot wide space as an entrance, and the living room is connected to a 10-foot long narrow hallway. Now, from the living room, you can't see most of the kitchen or past 2 feet in the hallway, and from the hallway, you can't see half of the living room when it's separated by the bathroom. I get done in the bathroom and I see headlights flashing through the living room window. I'm in the hallway, too afraid to move, and get my phone, or wake up my roommates. I'm too scared to do anything, but my bedroom door is open, so I softly call for my dog, knowing he barks at anything that moves, hoping that will scare them away. As I thought once he sees the headlights, he'll go fucking nuts, but he's short so he can't reach the window, so he's in the middle of the coffee table barking. I see the lights turn off and wait for about 5 minutes before he starts barking in the kitchen. My roommate is now awake, asking me what the fuck the dog's barking at. I tell him and he goes back into the kitchen to get his boxer on his leash and tells me to get in the kitchen and get the phone and the hatchet. As I'm getting my stuff, I hear a thud against the door, the back door, and then another. He's trying to kick the door in. I call 911 and explain the situation. They say that there'll be 10 minutes. I get back to my roommate and we head to the kitchen where he opens a back door and in stumbles 2 guys about my height, all dressed in black. They look up at us and start freaking out because they've got 2 guys with 2 fairly large dogs. One looks like he injects steroids and the other has a hatchet. One guy is screaming, "This isn't her house. How did you fuck this up?" The other one is bawling his eyes out. Apparently, they were going to break into one of the guy's ex-girlfriend's house, what happened to be my next door neighbour, and kidnap her. The one guy got the wrong house and mistook me as the guy's ex because I had my hood up and he couldn't see my face. I have the same build as her, annoyingly. The cops arrived shortly after and took them. It was freaky and I hope this never happens again. I don't know what I would have done if they were really after us.
This took place when I was 8 years old, so I apologize if the story and the chronology are a bit spotty. I didn't have an in-depth understanding of all that was going on at that age. My friend and I were walking around, just messing around in the snow, when we ran into a cop who said that something was going down and they were chasing someone, and asked if we had seen anybody. We actually didn't, but we were 8 and wanted to be helpful. So we said, yeah, we did. We saw a girl run down the path right there. We didn't think much of it after that and just continued on. After a while, I got cold, so I parted ways with my friend and went home. I spent the rest of the night watching television in my living room. I woke up in the middle of the night to about 3 or 4 cops in our living room, speaking with my mother and my terrified sister. I asked my mom what was going on, and one of the cops filled me in. Apparently, there was a drug-related incident happening the day prior, where a couple of junkies or dealers were running from the police. The 3 junkies had been coordinating over walkie-talkie in our neighborhood to evade the police. At some point during the night, the woman entered our house. The police sketch actually looked a lot like the junkie lady that crushed her husband's head with an ATM in Breaking Bad. According to my sister, she came down the stairs where she was reading a book, which means that the woman entered through our front door, which leads into our living room where I was. Neither me or my sister noticed her, as we were intent on whatever we were doing. The woman snuck past, changed into my mother's clothes, dumped her drugs in a drawer, and left her clothes in the guest bedroom. She tried to sneak past my sister again, but my sister saw her and freaked out. Of course, the woman grabbed her and tried to silence her and calm her down, telling her that she was just checking out our house and that she knocked, but no one answered and she let herself in. My neighbor, however, saw this woman enter our house and called the police right away. The police arrived at our house to see one of the junkies trying to get into our house through the back door to meet up with her friend, and found my sister being held by the woman already in our house. Why she never left, I have no idea. They arrested them on the spot and searched the rest of the house for anyone else. After telling us this, they took us down to our guest bedroom, where we found all the drugs and her clothes hidden under the bed.
I usually walk to work because I live pretty close and there's really no reason to drive. I live in a good-sized city and I've never had any problems before. Well, on this morning, I walked to work as I often do with earbuds in. Not smart, I know, but like I said, I've never had any problems. To give more of a picture, I'm a 5-foot tall girl and not very big. I was a couple of blocks away from my work when a guy came out of nowhere, and out of the corner of my eye, I could see him meet my pace, and he began making hand motions. Annoyed, I pulled out my earbuds and looked at him. At this, he smiled creepily and stepped closer to me. He was taller than me, and he was stocky.
"Hey, did I go to high school with you?"
he asked. I haven't been in high school in about 8 years. No, I replied, not showing any interest in him.
"I'm pretty sure we did. I remember a pretty girl like you."
He smiled, thinking he had just complimented me or something. "I went to a private school. I don't know you." I changed my tone to an annoyed one and rolled my eyes. I lied. I hadn't gone to a private school. I just wanted to get rid of this guy who was following me. I pulled out my phone and began texting my dad and sister, telling them that a guy was following me. They texted me back frantically, but since they weren't in town, there was nothing they could do to help me.
"Do you have a boyfriend? Do you like that car back there?" he asked.
I hadn't even noticed the black car that was driving slowly behind us. I felt my heart drop at the sight of it. In the car sat 2 more guys, and I was outnumbered. "I do have a boyfriend, and no, I don't like that car. It's a piece of shit." He didn't like my response at all. His face wrinkled, showing that he was annoyed with me.
"Well, that sucks,"
was all he responded as he stepped closer to my side. My work was literally a few steps away, as I could hear the car getting closer. I didn't want these guys knowing where I worked, but the building right beside the one I worked was abandoned, and he knew it too. The more we walked, the more he tried to get me closer to the abandoned building. especially by the broken windows. In the parking lot, I saw one of my good friends and yelled for her. "Hey, Jess," I yelled, getting her attention. She turned and saw me. I must have looked a certain way, because Jess's face twisted in an odd way. "Oh, hey girl, your dad, Steve," fake name, was going to come by later today. My dad is rather well known in the city we lived in, even though he lived in the next city over. My dad and his family are not known in a good way. Though he and his family had a bad rep, they were good people, if that makes any sense. The guy that had been following me stopped dead in his tracks.
I have to go now.
He said. He struggled to get out as he hopped into the car, and after a few seconds, they sped off. If it hadn't been for my friend and her quick thinking, things could have ended very badly.
This happened in my old elementary school, which is pretty much right behind our house. I was walking to go and get my brother, who's 11, to come back home as I approach the park. He's nowhere in sight. I start to get a little frantic because he's a smart kid and knows danger when he sees it, but is so friendly that he'll jump to any offer to go and play video games. So at the time, I'm thinking that he may have had a close friend that he is with, so I call my mom and let her know. She said that since a year ago, nobody we knew lived in our neighborhood, and we started freaking out. As I began to look around and ask people if they saw him, one kid knew who I was and told me that he was walking with a few older teenagers to a house a few blocks down. Naturally, I start sprinting to go and see where he went. He's a gullible kid, and I'm thinking of the worst. I end up finding the house he's at, and it's an absolute shithole. There were some teenagers in the vicinity of the house, and I asked what they were doing, and one told me they were delivering a package to somebody, and that somebody was the owner of this nasty house. I freaked out. I ran and drop-kicked the door so damn hard, I broke the door off the hinges, and I ran inside to save my brother. Luckily, he was playing video games as this fucker was watching him. The man was a fat, sloppy, greasy-looking guy, the type of guy that runs a butcher shop. I immediately start yelling at my brother to get up and leave. Now I'm a big guy at 6'1" and 250 pounds, a former collegiate fullback, and as soon as I finished yelling at my brother, I get this by the neck and lift him against the wall, Michael Myers type of way. I get the guy to spill the beans and found out the situation and what happened. My brother told me that these teenagers came up and said that they knew who I was and invited my brother over to play video games. This man paid these kids to find a little boy to bring to his house so he could fondle them and sexually assault them. Possibly kidnap, or worse. I've never been so angry or scared at the same time in my life. I called the cops, and they arrest the man on charges of abduction and is now in jail. This happened 3 days ago, and I don't know how I could live with myself if my brother was killed right before Christmas time. Please watch over your siblings whenever you can, and stress to them the fact that you don't ever do anything without parental admission. That man is so lucky he didn't die, but I have too much of a future to murder a miserable, sick man like that. Greasy fuck. Let's hope you don't ever meet me again.
I've had a few experiences with some creeps, however this just happened and I really do think it's worth sharing. On Saturday night I had dinner with a few friends, and afterwards I started to go back to the Upper East Side where I live. I had just gotten off the subway, and when I got up to the street, I noticed a young girl, early 20s maybe, leaning against a wall crying. I also noticed that she was pregnant. Being the sensitive person I am, I kept looking at her and debated whether I should say something. But she noticed I kept looking at her and she approached me. Let's just say that it was like 12 degrees Saturday night in New York, and this girl was wearing a t-shirt, just the t-shirt, so I became concerned that she was in trouble. She introduced herself as Katie, and told me that she was 7 months pregnant and homeless. She asked if I could get her a hot chocolate or some hot beverage from the D and the D down the street. I didn't want to be insensitive, because that's not the kind of person I am, so I offered to give her some cash instead. To be honest, I was just tired and wanted to go home, but I did want to help her. Now this is where it got a little bit weird. I take out my wallet, and she clearly sees that I have, and not trying to sound spoiled or like a brat, a few $100s in cash and credit cards. However, she declines and says that she would much rather prefer the hot drink. I say, I'm so sorry about your situation, and I wish I could help more, but I really need to go home. And I held out a $20 bill. She keeps insisting, telling me it's only a few blocks away. Again, I tell her I can't, and hold out the money. She declines once again, but I can now see that she's starting to get aggravated. I apologise again, wish her well, and start to leave, when my curiosity gets the better of me. I see her leaving and going in the opposite direction of the D&D. I then made probably the worst decision of my life. However, I don't regret it. I followed her. Something was off about this girl, and I wanted to see what she was up to. She was probably 5'4"-ish, and I'm a 5'10" female athlete. The streets where we were walking down was crowded, and I managed to be unseen as I followed her. After maybe 5 minutes, she turned the corner and went up a street. The street was seriously shady as fuck. It was dark and it was empty. I decided to stay back, but kept looking around the corner, only to see her go in what seemed like an alley. I slowly walked to where the corner of the alley was, and carefully looked to see Katie with 3 men and another girl talking. They were at the far end of the alley, so I managed to be unseen. There was what looked like a van. I couldn't tell, but it looked like a small unhauled van. I listened to their conversation and made out a few things they said, like, next time, go out in the freezing cold wearing a t-shirt. It didn't work with the other girls last night either. Then I heard a man's voice say, you need to be more convincing. Then she yelled back at him saying, I'm wearing a fucking pregnant belly, how much more convincing could I fucking get? I then carefully peek around the corner to see Katie take off the fake belly she's wearing, and at that moment my heart sank. I almost fell into a trap. I begin to walk away and relaxed a little when I get up to a crowded street. When I walk home, I called my friend and told them what happened. He grew up in the city and he told me that he's heard of people who do stuff like that. But I don't know why they wanted to rob me, because if that was the case, why didn't Katie take my wallet when I took it out? I walk past that area almost every day and I have never seen her since. I don't know what their plans were, but I certainly don't think they were positive. So to Katie and her cult, club, or whatever it was, let's not meet again.
A bit of a background story. This happened in the summer, and I believe I was about 12 at the time. I was staying in a hotel in a fairly large city with my mum, my younger brother. We were visiting our other extended family, but chose not to stay in their house. My brother is younger than me by a decent amount, so I usually get told to keep an eye on him. On the day we arrived, my mum told me to do just that while she checked up in the hotel to get our card. So, my brother and I sat down on the couch in the lobby. We relaxed a bit. We were sitting and a man in his mid-40s walked by into the hotel. The couch was facing the hotel doors, so I got a look at him. I remember that he was very average. Describing his features in detail could generate several images. The guy comes in and sits down on the couch opposite us. I didn't think anything of it until I realised that he didn't go up to the counter at first, he just come in and sat down. This made me feel a little uncomfortable. I thought that he might have followed us in. Thankfully, my mum called us over and told us that our room was ready. We left the lobby and went to our room. Shortly afterwards, we left the hotel to go and meet family. I forgot about that man for the rest of the day. We returned at about 7, and my mum told us that we could go swimming in the hotel pool. We all went to our rooms, changed, and went to the pool. A few minutes after we got in the water, the same man as before walked past and sat down. He was wearing jeans and a sweater. He definitely wasn't going swimming anytime soon. Again, we didn't think much of it until I could see that my mum was visibly worried. She pointed him out to me and she said that if he didn't leave within 5 minutes, we needed to go back to our hotel rooms. 5 minutes passed. He was still there, so we got our things and left. By then, it was close to 8. We bought a rented movie to watch, so we planned to watch that and go straight to bed. I noticed that my mom was a little on edge because of the man watching us, and I got a little more worried myself too. Halfway through the movie, my mum got up and went to the shower. While she was in there, someone knocked on the door and said, "Housekeeping," in a high-pitched voice. I thought it was weird that the cleaning staff were coming this late, but we needed another towel, so I answered the door. I wish I hadn't been that stupid. It was that creepy man. He gave me a smile and a little wave. I just stood there. My mind automatically went to the worst possible situation. Kidnapping, rape, torture, etc. I heard the water in the shower turn off. He stood there as well for a moment, then he spoke. How was your swimming?" At that moment, my mum came out of the shower. She saw the man at the door, pulled me back and slammed the door. She locked it. Then she called for the front desk from our hotel to report the guy. I told her just call the police, but she didn't listen. She then requested that we switched rooms. I then heard footsteps stomping down the hallway away from our room. Thankfully, the guy left. After that, we switched hotel rooms and didn't see the guy again over our stay. I just thank God that he wasn't vicious, because he could have easily overpowered my mum and my siblings. God knows what would have happened if this guy was violent too.
Just to clarify, I'm 5'7" and a 14-year-old female. This encounter took place when I was 13. I live in a very quiet village in Scotland, and this town has never had a kidnapping problem before that I know of, so I wasn't exactly prepared for this encounter. My parents asked me to run to the store for some essentials like milk and bread, etc. So I start walking the half-mile or so down to town. Since I am a really paranoid person, I normally keep a good eye out on my surroundings, and I notice something is off. A black minivan is driving slowly behind me. I'm too afraid to turn around to see the driver, but I pick up my walking pace. When I do, they start driving a little faster. In my head, I'm screaming, "I'm gonna die! I'm gonna die!" I finally make it to the store parking lot and practically sprint for the front doors. I probably looked like an idiot, but when you think you're going to die, you run pretty fast. I talked to one of the cashiers, who was a very nice young lady who looked to be in her early 20s. I told her I thought I was being followed and pointed to the vehicle so she could get a good look at the plate number. She said that the staff would look out for me. That made me feel a little bit better, and I made my way to the dairy aisle. I was scanning for the cheapest milk when there was a tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see a 6'2", middle-aged man that had greasy black hair and was wearing a tracksuit. "Hey there, I just wanted to say that you're really beautiful. Very pretty." He took a few steps towards me. I, being a person who really hates human interaction, started to cry silently. The tears were just spilling down my face with no sound. He takes this opportunity to say, "Now, stop crying. I don't want that gorgeous face of yours all wet. You and me should go down and have a drink together. What do you say? I was so scared at this point, but that's when I heard the cashier's voice coming from behind him, asking him what the hell he was doing. Oh, well, I'm just asking my beautiful girlfriend if she wants to have a drink at the bar, that's all. I look up to the lady and say, I'm 13. This is where she threatens to call the police. He backs off and says that this has all been a big misunderstanding and he thought I was older. He then turns and runs out of the store. The lady, whose name was Rachel, helped me gather the rest of my items since I was in a panicked state. She then called the police and told them the guy's license plate number and called my parents to inform them that they should come pick me up. I gave her my mom's number. I brought her a box of chocolates the next day to say thank you. I don't know what happened to the man, but I hope he's in police custody, where he belongs. What's up everyone, Unit 522 here, and I hope all of you enjoyed today's video. I want to thank my friends Wormy Horror, Let's Read, That Creepypasta Guy, and Insomniac for joining me in today's mega collaboration video. I'll leave a link to all their channels below in the description so you guys can check them out if you haven't done so already. Also, I want to let you guys know that my friend Furigen has just released a new video on his channel that features, get this, Unit 522, the character, in a live-action video. Me and him have been coordinating this project for about a month, and I think it turned out great. So I hope you guys also check that out as well. It's one of the more unique collaborations that I've been a part of, and I'll leave a link to that video in the outro sequence so you guys can check that out as well. Just want to thank you guys so much for sticking with me. We just hit 54,000 subscribers, and that's really fucking awesome, I gotta say. Be sure to share, rate, comment on this video, and stay tuned for more content coming really soon. And you guys know that I'm not bullshitting you. I put out almost every day, and I do it for you guys because I love you guys, and you guys are fucking awesome. Thanks again for watching, and all of you guys have a great weekend. There's always a reason to be afraid.